Let's see how fast they go. Aren't they look so cute? Oh, they look so cute.
Yeah, this gets me every time. The dogs are the ones that do all the work, but I'm the one that's out of breath. How do you think they did? Great! Yeah. They are probably the happiest government employees you will ever meet. But these dogs still have an important job here in the wintertime. So they're not show dogs, they're not race dogs. These are freight hauling dogs. And a lot of what they're doing is actually helping to haul scientific research equipment, as well as the researchers themselves, out into the park. They've been helping out with sound monitoring research, so we have a piece of sound equipment behind me.
They've been
also helping out with glacier research. So they've been going out to glaciers that are out in the park and seeing how much they grow or shrink in this changing climate that we have here in Alaska. They've also been helping out with other research. So they've been helping monitor mesocarnivores. And the way they do this is actually they've been sniffing out scat and then actually collecting it and then studying that after we get back. They also help build different projects. So they'll help haul out all the supplies and timber in the wintertime, and then people will come back in the summer and build it. So we were actually using teams of 16 dogs to help haul out 1,000-pound support beams to help build a bridge that's over Riley Creek on the Triple Lakes Trail. These dogs also help clean up trash or debris that they find out in the park. So we actually brought them up to gates of the Arctic National Park, and they were hauling out 50-pound oil drums that the military had left there. This is the only park with a working sled dog team. So sometimes other parks in Alaska need a way to access their remote areas of their parks. And then they're also here to help greet winter visitors. So believe it or not, we do have visitors here in the wintertime, and they are a presence out there in our park. So why do you think we still use these dogs instead of, say, a snow machine or a helicopter or an airplane? Feel free to shout it out. Wilderness, exactly. Any other reasons? Quieter, yeah. Would you rather hear the soft panting of these dogs or the buzz of a snow machine or an airplane? Any other reasons? Pollution, yeah. So what do you put in a snow machine? Oil, gas. What do you get out of a snow machine? Pollution, exhaust. What do you put into dogs? Food. What do you get out of dogs? Compost. Yeah, so all the flowers are actually planted in compost from our dogs. So maybe don't touch the flower pots out there in the yard. Another reason that we use these dogs is added intuition. So they're actually kind of an extra GPS. So when we're out there in the winter, these dogs can sniff out trails after years of them being on them. There's a story of a ranger here back in the 50s. He took his sled dogs out, and then pretty soon it was whiteout conditions, so he was in a blizzard, and he couldn't see 10 feet in front of his lead dogs. So he was going, and then all of a sudden his lead dogs stopped. And no matter what he said, no matter what expletive he threw at those dogs, they would not budge. So he got off the back of his sled, walked out to his lead dogs, and he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Do you think a snow machine would care if you went off the edge of a cliff? Probably not. But the reason that we still use these sled dogs here today is that back in 1980, they actually passed this thing called the Wilderness Act. And they designated the core 2 million acres of the park as wilderness. which means you can't use any mechanized form of transportation because in wilderness, man is just a visitor there and he cannot leave any lasting mark. So you can't use any mechanized form of transportation, no power tools. So that's no snow machines, no chainsaws, not even a bicycle. So these dogs are the only way that we as rangers access those areas of the park in the wintertime. They have a pretty impressive job. With these dogs, you need a hardworking team to complete these projects. So today I will introduce you to our team here. In the lead position, we have Zani, and then next to Zani we have Alexi, and in between them we have Aaron today. With lead dogs, you want extremely smart dogs. Those dogs that are willing to listen to commands, as well as maybe know not to listen to your commands if they're probably bad commands. We also need dogs that won't get distracted. So they need to be able to ignore things like snowshoe hares, squirrels, all of that wildlife. They also need to be comfortable in front of a bunch of other dogs. Behind our lead position, we have our swing position. And today in swing, we have Tatum, and then next to Tatum is Cupcake. So as swing dogs, we want dogs, so the swing position is good for dogs up and coming leaders. So Cupcake, he's a year old. He's in a great position because he has the best view or maybe the worst view of the dogs in front of him. So he can hear the commands and see how those lead dogs react. Swing position also can serve as kind of a backup lead position. So if for some reason our leaders decide to ignore the musher or do the wrong turns, these swing dogs are in charge of keeping the rest of the team on track. Behind our swing position, if we had any more dogs, they'd go right here. We don't have any team dogs today because we only need 5 dogs for the demonstration, because if we had any more dogs, I'd probably be in Kansas right now or something. Just way too much power. But in the winter, we typically use 8 to 10 dogs. It really depends how much your sled weighs, though. So we weight the sled so each dog pulls 50 to 100 pounds, but we normally keep it closer to the 50 or 60 pound mark for each dog. So behind our imaginary team dogs, today we have our single wheel dog. In wheel, we have Pressic. So with wheel dogs, you want dogs that are wheelie strong. Dogs that are big and strong because they are the ones who are pulling most of the weight with the sled. Also in the winter, if the runners are frozen to the ground, it's the job of the wheel dog to break those runners free. And we only have a single wheel today because, again, we only have 5. It really doesn't matter if you have an odd or even number for running. And our dogs are generalists, so they are trained to run in every single position. Some of them are better at other positions than others, and some of them prefer to be in certain positions. Today in lead, we have 2 lead dogs. That's pretty typical for our kennel here. It's a lot easier for 2 dogs to work together up front. So now that you've met our team, kind of the best way to see their individual personalities is to see them run home. So we're going to unharness them, and then we're going to send them back to their houses. And then one of our kennels rangers will be waiting by their houses with a treat. And if they get back to their house, they will get a cookie. And if they don't get back to their house, who knows what will happen. They are trained to run towards the kennel's building. They've been taught that that's the best place ever. So normally they beeline right for that building, but sometimes they'll go say hi to their friends instead. So our setup today, we have our wheeled training cart here. So we actually do use this in the fall. We'll start running with these dogs here again at the end of September because it is way too hot for them right now to do any sort of formal training. When we start running with them again, we'll start with 4 or 5 miles and then gradually work our way up to 20 miles, which is pretty average for a day's work here in the winter time. We have cabins spaced out in the backcountry along the park road about 15-20 miles apart, or a day's mush. So we actually stuff those cabins in the fall with food, both human and dog food, so we don't have to carry all that weight in the winter when we're out there doing our projects. And then the kennels as a whole will do about 3,000 miles in a winter. To put that in perspective for you, that's the equivalent of going from the East Coast to the West Coast in the lower 48 states. So you folks that just came in, if you could get to the other side of that tree and then behind the red line on the ground, the dogs are about to run free back to their houses. So the first next dog going home is Zani. He's 3 years old. He is an only child, and he has yet to learn how to run back to his house. So he kind of has a different learning curve. Maybe eventually he will get it. But Zani's really funny. His best friend growing up was a little stuffed animal. Since he was an only child, he was getting pretty fat. So we used the stuffed animal to kind of give him a brother who would give him competition and give him some exercise. So going home now is Pressic. Pressic is 4 years old. Pressic's a really playful dog, so we have a free-run pen in the back where 3 or 4 dogs can run around and play with each other. Pressic would prefer to play catch by himself, though. He would rather do that than play with the other dogs. Next up is Elixir. She is 7 years old. Elixir actually came to us from another kennel, so that's why she looks a little different than the rest of our dogs. So occasionally we will bring in dogs from other kennels, but we typically have a litter here each summer. And then after Elixir we have Tatum. Tatum is 6 years old. She's really small, but actually really feisty. She's a very strong dog, and her nickname is Tater Tot. Tatum normally gets distracted with puppies, so we'll see if she makes it home. She did great. We'll keep Cupcake here. So you might have noticed with our team here today, hi Cupcake, that they all look very different. Even though they all look very different, they are all the same breed. You're not going home yet? They're all the same breed. They're all Alaskan Huskies. And Cupcake here is 1 year old, so this is the first time we're keeping him, so he's kind of confused why he isn't going home and getting a treat back there. Okay, so they're all Alaskan Huskies. The Alaskan Husky is not a recognized breed by the American Kennel Club. Because they don't have that standard appearance. We're breeding them for their ability to pull a sled and not what they look like. But they're a mix of all the dogs that were brought up here for the gold rush in the early 1900s, as well as any dogs that the natives had. So they would just steal any big dog off the West Coast that they thought could pull a sled, and they'd bring them up here. So retrievers, shepherds, St. Bernards, those types of dogs play a part in these dogs' genetics. But that's 100 years ago. At this point, we've only been breeding them with other Alaskan Huskies. So genetically, they are their own distinct breed, but they'll just never be recognized as one. So the things that we are looking for in Alaskan Husky, we're breeding them for certain adaptations that make them perfect for their job here in the wintertime. So Cupcake has a really nice fluffy tail. In the wintertime, he'll take that fluffy tail, put it over his face, which has a little less fur on it, and then create a nice warm pocket of air. So our dogs, when they're out in the wilderness, we don't bring straw out there for them. They don't have houses. They just go to bed right in the snow. So they're perfectly happy in -50, -60 degrees. It does not faze them at all. Cupcake also has a nice 2-layer coat system. So he has an outer layer that's a guard hair. It's these stiffer hairs. That helps keep him nice and dry. And then he also has an underlayer. It's more of a nice downy coat. A lot of them are shedding that layer right now. And again, that keeps them nice and warm. And if you want a free souvenir, go ahead and take one. There's plenty to go around. Cupcake also has nice long legs. We want dogs that are nice and tall because it helps keep them, it helps let them break trail in the wintertime through deep snow, because our dogs are making their own trail out there. So imagine a team of Chihuahuas trying to go through deep snow.